All right. So today um, we'll go over kind of the points for how we're working on this mirror board. We'll give you guys a good instruction on how we're going to be doing that. We'll after that we'll check in and kind of get things moving. We'll have an icebreaker to make sure everyone's creative juices are flowing. We're going to spend a little bit of time recapping the discussions from the first workshop, talking about what it is, what we went over in that period, what some takeaways, and then we'll also be looking at our objective setting for this workshop. A lot of today is going to be talking in groups, and you guys are going to be very engaged in the process of today's workshop. We'll break out into our thematic groups to kind of put together discussions and outlaying the discussions that we had in between workshops. And then we're going to introduce one of the portions of this application lab that we're really excited for the potentials, and that is the peer coaching groups. We'll kind of pull ourselves into smaller groups and delve into some of our challenges and start seeing if we can't group source and peer source some good delving into the challenges that we're identifying and how to approach those. And then that will kind of take us towards the end of our application lab this session. And we'll set ourselves up with a little bit of homework for the in-between sessions over the coming 2 weeks. So the next session after this will be in 2 weeks instead of one. And this will give us an opportunity to really delve into some of the challenges that we're looking at and start understanding better how we're approaching these challenges and kind of delving into a plan for how we'll look into these challenges in the near future. So that's where we'll be going today. Are we set up to kind of go into the Miro board?
Yeah, we can give it a shot.
Okay.
Great. All right, so everyone, I'm gonna just kind of run through how we can be navigating around Miro. But before I do that, I just really want to zoom out a little bit. So you're all seeing my screen, and my whole screen is filled up with our Miro board. So what I'm doing right now is I'm zooming out just to show you all what the grand scheme of things is. So we have Miro frames for different parts of this session. And right now I'm going to zoom back in so I can go to the welcome frame where we were just at. So I'm using the plus button here to zoom in. And how we're going to be using it today is we're going to have some light use of Miro, which means that we only need you all to be able to move around the board and write on some post-it notes. So not a lot of heavy lifting on your end. So the important piece to note to be able to move around Miro well is this zoom in and zoom out icons. You also have here on the upper right hand side, if you see the icon that has my initials on it, CT, you can click that and you can follow me wherever I am on the board. So if you feel like you're getting lost, you're not sure where we are, just click on my initials and you will be back on track. Another way to get organized and not feel like you're lost in the grand scheme of things is this frames icon. So if you click that, it'll show you a list of the different frames within this Miro board. And it's important to note that these are numbered because Lloyd and Darren, as they go through this session, they will be referencing these numbers as well. So they might be saying, let's now meet on frame 10, for example, and kind of go on instructions for the share out. So you can click this and it brings you to that exact frame. So again, there is multiple ways to move around the board. You can just follow me by clicking the icon. You can open frames, or you can explore on your own and zoom in and out. And the way to move around it is just like any other, if you have an iPad or any other tablet, you can use your cursor and your arrow to move around. And I'm gonna bring us to this board, or frame, I mean, just to reiterate what I mentioned. So again, you can use a mouse to navigate. You can also use a trackpad. If you're using just your laptop without a mouse, you can just pinch and scroll through the board using your fingers. And I mentioned earlier that you can use the icons here below. So the plus and minus is in and out. There's also a map icon here. So you can see me clicking on it right now to give you a really, really big overview of the board. So I don't think this will be as useful for you though. So I would just use the plus and minus button, the icons here with my initial, and then the frames here on the left-hand side. If this is a challenge, if this is challenging, do not worry, we will guide you every step of the way. And the other thing to note is that if Miro is just not working for you right now, we have alternative ways for you to participate using the chat box. So we will be prompting questions in the chat box as well. Moving on, we do have a kind of a recommended way to set up your screen. So if you want to be able to see both the Miro board and your Zoom window, so you can see everyone's faces, we recommend taking the white bar on top of your Zoom window and bringing that to one side of your screen, left or right, doesn't matter. Bringing it to one side of the screen and making it kind of lock in place. So if you just move it to one side of the screen, it automatically takes up space in half of your screen. That then gives you a chance to click on the window that you want open in the other half. So click Miro for that. So that should be giving you both Zoom and Miro in kind of your laptop. If you have 2 monitors or 3 monitors, then this isn't an issue. You could just obviously just drag Zoom or Miro to one side and the other window to your laptop or desktop. But if you just have one screen using your laptop, you can certainly split your screen. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Feel free to unmute yourselves or message us in the chat box.
And if you don't like any of this fancy technology, just unmute yourself and talk. We'll work through the whole lab today and the next one too.
Yeah, and Lloyd has some keyboard shortcuts also in the chat box to navigate Miro. All right. So no questions so far. I don't see any oh, okay. Sorry. So the message from Lloyd is to help you split your screen. Great. So now we're just gonna get everyone checked in to this session. If you're inside Miro, you can feel free to navigate, find your table. Essentially, find the thematic area group that you worked on in the last session, the last workshop, and write your name in one of the post-its around that thematic area table. If you're not able to go into Miro, feel free to use the chat box and share with us your name, your country, and the thematic area table that you want to sit in or that you're part of. And then if you weren't here with us last week for session 1, feel free to also just write your name in and we will put you in the 4th table. So I see Abebayehu was already entered and Veronica's already entered their names.
What frame are they on, Camille?
Oh, this is frame 4, I believe.
Frame 5.
Frame 5, yeah. I'm gonna bring everyone to me. So you all should be seeing what I'm seeing right now. I'm seeing some names in the chat box. All right, will you all be ready if I remove screen share and just have you navigate Miro on your own? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I don't see any, actually. Some videos are turned off. My sense at this point is we might have to do screen share throughout, and then we'll just use the chat box to navigate and interact with you all. How does that sound for the cohort? It might be a lot. It might be a lot right now, huh?
Yeah, I think that would be easier for me.
Yeah. Moyen, how do you feel about that? Or Barack? Go ahead, Moyen.
I'm just trying what you just completed learning. I'm just trying on the Miro. Yeah, maybe within some times I will be adapt with the system.
Yeah.
I'll come any problem, if any problem I face, I'm coming with this. No problem. You could carry on.
Okay. Well, I think the fact that we only have Ababayehu, Ibrahim, and Veronica on writing on the post-it notes, and there's only maybe 6 of you inside Miro, I think that's a sign for us to just screen share and use the chat box to get your inputs throughout the whole session. How do the other members of the team feel about that? Screen share throughout?
Yeah, I think
I
it's
mean,
correct.
you can go ahead and screen share because we are not figuring out where
Yeah.
the frames are and stuff like this. But in the next session, I think we would be good to go. Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, if anything, you all have the link to Miro. So even during the session, if you want to play around it, you certainly can do that. All right, I'm gonna hand it over to
Me.
Darren. Yeah.
All right. So now that we've figured all of that out, just to get us kind of on the same page and get us moving a little bit, we're going to place everyone into small groups of 3 people into breakout rooms. We're going to take a few minutes, 3 minutes in each room. And while we're inside the room, we want you to introduce yourself and find one thing in common among the 3 of you. Maybe you've been on the same emergency response. Maybe you have the same number of children. Maybe you like the same food. Maybe you take your coffee the same way. After 3 minutes are up, we're going to reshuffle the rooms, and you'll have the opportunity to do that again with some new folks. You'll do the same thing, introduce yourself, find something in common. After 2 rounds of these short breakouts, we're going to pull everyone back into the main room, and then we're going to share what we found in common with our colleagues. Does anyone have any questions about this? All right, let's get to know each other. So now that we have everyone back together, I'm wondering if we can quickly share some of the commonalities that we've discovered with chatting with our colleagues here. If anyone wants to just share the first commonalities or the commonalities that you discovered.
Okay, I can share for the first group. It was Darren Suleimanite, sorry if I'm butchering your name, and Musa. And we tried hard to come up with some commonalities, and at the end, we stuck with we all like to drink coffee.
A very important one. How about some of the other groups quickly?
So my name is Barack. I was in group 1. I was with Luisa, Abe, and Raul. So our common denominator was that we are all married and we have not been born in the US.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my name is Ibrahim. So in my group, there's Lloyd, Moyen, and myself. And our commonality is we're all fans of football. We are all football fans. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's a good one.
Hi, my name is Moin. Ibrahim already told about my first group. I'm going to share my discussion with second group. There was common things with Raul. We have 2 kids each. One, the same one is boy and another is girl. In that group, we were 4, Musa, Raul, Dareen, and me were there. Yeah, that's all.
Great, thank you. All right, anyone else? Quick a moment. Well, while we're having this icebreaker, I do want to quickly reintroduce the members of the cash, voucher, and food distribution learning stream, the folks who are kind of producing this application lab. There's all of our beautiful pictures. So you'll be hearing from, today you'll be hearing from both Lloyd and myself. Lloyd Banwart, the top left corner. We have Luisa also online who is helping us, and Camille. Kim has been managing the screens that we've been looking at, and Elisa is also helping to help produce these efforts. So this is the team that are putting these efforts together. And if you have any questions at any time, you can reach out to us and we will help. And somehow amongst all of us, we'll be able to hopefully able to answer any of the questions that you may have. All right. So now let's start looking into our objectives. Our recapping what we were doing during the past workshop is looking at what we're going to be doing in this application lab.
You can jump in here. I think it's, and then, so can I get 2 volunteers to help me recap? And I know that most of your mics work at this point. So if nobody volunteers in the first 5 or 10 seconds here, I'm just gonna happily choose 2 people. Unmute yourself and say, I do. If not a marriage proposal acceptance, but just a recap. So Barack, can I solicit you as one? Is Barack still on?
Yes, I
there
can
he
go
is.
ahead. Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
And then as a second, could I solicit? Let's go with Mohin. Can you do the second?
Sure.
And so the instructions are quite simple. So what I'd like is, and maybe Barack, you start. Just say 1 sentence that summarizes workshop 1. And then Mohin's role is to continue with that sentence and say a second sentence. And then when Mohin finishes his second sentence, Barack, you're up and you say the third sentence. Mohin, when he's done, you say the fourth. So you kind of tell a story off of each other on what workshop 1, kind of an overview of what that workshop was. Is that clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
Cool, thanks, guys. I'll let you start it off.
So I don't know, looks like I forgot a lot of stuff, but in the last workshop, we looked at the issues what can lead us into retargeting. We looked at what would lead us into retargeting, apart from, of course, the general introduction we had for getting to know one another. And then we started delving into what are the factors that can lead us into retargeting.
Over to Mohan.
Yes. So discussion happened on retargeting, and also after some breakup session introducing, we agreed with some common themes, which is a lot of things came down, like the problems from our experiences, what we faced in the COVID situation, how the targeting people, criteria changes with time, how we adopted. So later, some group was formed with the common things, and I am with the group A, which is like on the especially the group A group is saying, I forgot in the name of some, but we will introduce our work plan, our homework description. We'll come up with our discussion.
Great. I think that's pretty good. How's what did we miss anything between Barak and Mohan? Does everybody want to insert any other critical points from workshop 1 that they thought? Because we have some folks joining today that weren't there at workshop 1. So anything else they should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, we discussed the rationale behind this workshop and why BHA values it, and it's that BHA doesn't have best practices when it comes to beneficiary targeting challenges posed by COVID-19. So they're really looking to us to help, learn from our challenges. So everything that we do contribute is quite critical because they're going to take it on board. We also define targeting versus vulnerability, with vulnerability being defined as the characteristics of those individuals, households, or groups to be targeted that put them at additional or added risk. And then we also discussed some of the most urgent beneficiary targeting to be addressed in light of COVID-19.
That's great. Thanks, Veronica. And Barak and Mohan. Much appreciated. And thanks for, and Veronica raises an important thing, and that some of the feedback we were wondering at the end is, this is all centered around COVID-19 as kind of its underpinning the concept behind targeting and vulnerability. What really became clear and evident to me as I had conversations with you in the last workshop was COVID-19 affects populations in dramatically different ways. And sometimes the populations or activities don't even realize that COVID-19 is the driving force to why some of these vulnerability are changing. I thought that was really eye-opening as we had some of those discussions last week. As we move on to the next frame, so our objectives for today are we want to take a little bit of time to share out the conversations you had in your groups that were around these specific topical areas of challenges that you're facing. And then we want to provide the core of today is peer coaching opportunity. So we're putting you all in different groups, and really this is a known process where someone pitches kind of the challenge they're having to the group. The group gets time to think about how their experience may inform their colleagues' challenge. and then provide specific feedback to that challenge. And we'll go through that process later, but that is really the core of where we're handing, of what we're centering today around. Then lastly, we're gonna talk about kind of next steps between now and the next workshop with a short activity again. So preparing for project team discussions and adaptation plans, largely again centered around these challenges that we've begun to identify. We'll tie it all back into the documents we had you read between last week and this week around and that's largely some of this work that Veronica had mentioned that VHA has been part of in creating this library of promising practices for targeting in the time of COVID-19. So with that, I want to ask if there's any questions up till now on either last week, if you weren't able to join us, or this week on process, or maybe there's something you wanted to talk about or see this week that we're not covering, and we can flag that now and see if we can fit it in or make sure that it's covered in the third workshop. Great. I'm gonna kick it over to my colleague Darren again. This is the time that we're just gonna go through some of the work that you all did offline between last week and this week to just share with each other. And frankly, I haven't even had the chance to read all of what you completed. So I'm looking forward to this section myself. So Darren, over to you.
Thanks, Lloyd. All right, for our first activity today, we're going to hear from each of the thematic area groups. On row 2, we're being brought there right now. We're going to see how that each frame corresponds to a thematic area. We took what you submitted in the discourse forms or your worksheets, that we took that information and we're able to compile that into these frames. We're going to begin with thematic group A and give you the chance to share out some of the points that you were able to discuss during your discussions. And when you're sharing out, you'll have a chance to share your thoughts. What did you appreciate about the information they shared? We're going to have discussions about what could be missing. And if you have the opportunity to use the Miro board while we're doing this, there's going to be some sticky notes that are to the side of the board. And that's where we can put in some of our thoughts. You can type in, what you appreciate about what's being shared or some information that might be missing. If you're not able to do that, you can unmute yourself and mention something, or you can type something into the chat box. Is that all fairly clear?
Yeah.
And I think there's a great opportunity for those of you that joined today that weren't here last week to really bring yourself up to speed on discussions and where the group is.
Great. So group A, the changes to vulnerabilities from COVID-19. Do you want to give us a brief feedback about the discussions and what you wanted to share with a wider group? We'll have 3 minutes for this session, for this share out. Anyone from this group?
We haven't heard from Guy yet today. Guy, would you mind giving a summary for your group?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
We are working with the other member of the group. So talking about information that activity inform the thematic area. we are talking about the nutritional status of the population we serve. And we are talking also about the children under those are the no. So let me start again. Talking about the information that our activity inform the thematic area. We are talking about the information of our behavior of external market, including the supply of local market. We also see about the information of a supply chain of market in the implementation area. Talking about information that we do not have and is necessary information that do not have and is necessary related to those information relate to nutritional status of population we serve, in particular those children under 5 here. This also talking about the lack of control information of the movement of population and the influence of pastoralism activity, which are very variable in the area of implementation. Talking about activity, the difficulty that we are facing, we have put in place a community network to early warming the community information and data control. And then we use also weekly market to collect information in the most of the hard to reach area of implementation. For the second question, talking about activity as inform how will you use or how it's been used, we have developed SOP related to flexible for the flexibility of our program, and then during implementation, when there is some emergency that's happening, we can bring a rapid assessment and we can explain how we will respond through that rapid assessment to reach the gap and the needs. And we also adapt our program to sorry, I was not prepared to be present, so very sorry.
Oh, you did great, Dee. Thanks for stepping up and doing that. I know it's never easy.
Now, to the wider group, is there any feedback that you might have to this? People who are not in this group, some insights that you might have gleaned, or something that you might have noticed about the points that they brought up. Please either share with the Miro board or go ahead and unmute yourself and make any mentions.
Maybe what I just saw that was striking and perhaps unique, and I would be curious to know the context in which they are working, is the use of technology in collecting data. They are using tools like POS, terminal platforms, and Honor, Comcare, Genius tags. This quite a high level of digital data collection, which in other contexts is not possible, but then that is just what I picked out from this.
Oh, that's very good. Yes. Anyone?
Oh, I was also going to just add on to what he asked. I'd be also like, as we go through this, I'd love to hear how those digital tools were adapted as a result of COVID-19, because that takes time and bandwidth too, and just the challenges that are associated with that and how it was accomplished. I know that would benefit all of us to hear out what that process was like.
Anyone else have any insights or questions they might have thought of that they would have liked to have heard more about?
I want to raise one issue, if you allow me, from the group.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the documents you have been used. We have provided two documents. One documents I shared through email. That documents consist more information, including all these. Maybe somehow it missed.
There were times we did do some cutting just to kind of make it fit into a screen.
So yeah, what you see on the page here isn't comprehensive of what you submitted. It's a summary of it. And we will make the full version available to all of our colleagues on the discourse.
Okay. It's fine.
Yeah, and maybe somebody from the group could even answer. I see a lot of reference here to SOPs, standard operating procedures. And I wonder to what extent those have been helpful during the time of COVID and making modifications in terms of vulnerabilities or targeting, or if you really had to kind of throw out the kitchen sink and start from scratch. Like I can, and this is open to anybody, not just this group, but were existing SOPs helpful? Or did you have to start from scratch? I'd love to just hear some examples of that.
If I can add something, talking about COVID-19, when the crisis is happening, we have challenges, the new vulnerability, and we are facing about new targeting. So it's better to define the SOP, define how we'll reach them, and how we'll define the new criteria of vulnerability and targeting, and to explain it to our staff, and then to have also those meeting or those relation with community to better understand what will be the different step to get those targeting, and then it's necessary to doing those new SOP if it could be helped. Hi. Over.
Yes, that's great.
Oh. Okay.
So I was just wondering around the SOPs, because what we are discussing here is how we are quickly adopting to be able to respond to a need to retarget just because of the COVID-19 or a shock that has just come in between, and as a result of that shock, there are more vulnerable groups and you want to include them. And I think SOPs are written way before, and they don't anticipate such issues like sudden shocks that do come in, unless is an SOP that is really well thought out. So I'm just still wondering how quickly one can come up with standard operating procedures that can accommodate a shock and be able to use those to adjust their program in one way or the other.
That is a good question.
All good things to be discussed. I think we should move on to the next thematic group.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is group B. And so would any member, and so the slide for this is, our frame is frame 12. For those of you following along on your own Miro board. And so this is Solomano, Fasil, Barak, Abi, and Rodwell. And I know we're putting you on the spot a bit, but would someone from your group be willing to take 2 to 3 minutes to kind of walk us through what your discussion was and how you landed on responses for each of these key points?
Now, unfortunately, I've been talking a lot, and according to the group arrangement, we discussed these issues and they requested me to make a presentation. So what I'll do, I will just go through quickly, and then if you have questions, please, the group members, you would really come in and contribute, because you realize from the start of this session, I've been talking, and it's not good to domineer over others. So what we were looking at our group is on the thematic area around improving communication with the funders. So we need information to provide to the funders such that, the information we collect, how can this information help us to communicate to the funders on the need to adjust or retarget, and probably even redesign or also adjust our activities. So our sources of information are through multi-sectoral needs assessment and other relevant needs assessment. Other relevant in this case means rapid needs assessment. Whenever we see a shock, we can always design a rapid needs assessment to assess and get deeper knowledge on the shock. Then also we hold the consultation with the stakeholders. We also use information from IPC, because IPC is usually updated as well whenever there is a shock. And then through the coordination body of food security and agriculture cluster, in other countries, it may have a different name. If there is an update regarding a shock, we can also get information from that to inform a need to retarget or even to adjust our activities. Then we also use the community committees to give us contextual or additional information around the communities we are targeting. Then there is the humanitarian actors coordination meetings. They are also good source of information. Then we conduct periodic market monitoring. So also this can inform, or rather can give us information to inform donors for a need to adjust our program. Then, of course, the market information and conducting market assessment go together. So there is quarterly monitoring visits. Some are done by phone, and some our staff are able to visit the locations if there is no restriction of movement. And all these, when they collect the information, they are able to provide. Then the additional area of information, especially on COVID, for example, in Yemen, the authorities are not reporting this, and it's very difficult to know to what extent local population are affected. So we may need more information on this. And then lastly, okay, we are there.
Well, that's okay. I mean, and maybe let's open it up to the rest of your group and see if they'd like to fill in any bits before we take feedback from other groups. So Solomanu, Fasil, Abi, Rodwell, would you like to fill in any bits there?
Yes, I don't have too much to add, but I just want to ensure that for us, we will just wish that we have a kind of two-way improvement of communication. So we don't want maybe a kind of improving the communication from the project towards the funders, but also from the funders towards the project implementers. because sometimes we want to endeavor conducting more data analysis, making more proposals, for example, when we are in the phase of renewing a project, for example. But sometimes you are scared of investing a lot of effort on an area where you are not sure the donor will collaborate with you, or an extension that they will not collaborate on. So we will really appreciate that the funders, for example, share the possible areas of extension that if we notice, we can be sure that this one can be supported by the donor. We can focus on this. And now that will be very important for us to help us invest more efforts and more development in project proposals or project modifications, and being confident that we are engaging into a fruitful discussion. But we are sometimes scared that what you are trying to say will not be approved by the donor and you don't need to invest efforts. Meanwhile, the needs are really relevant in the field. So this is just something that I wanted to add in behalf of the improvement of the communication in the two-way. The same way we give information, the same way sometimes we also need to have a frame where we can confidently work. Thanks, and over.
I think that's a great point, to get that two-way flow of information and data, and one that is challenging. What do others think outside of the group? What here do we really appreciate? Are there additional gaps that we can continue to work on filling, or key points that from your context should maybe be included?
I mean, I don't know how realistic this is, but Mercy Corps, in the program I'm managing, we were able to negotiate with the donor from the beginning to have an adaptive management approach to the program, with the understanding that, you know, when we do get new information, data, we can revise the program accordingly. So perhaps this is a good time to, you know, start advocating for that same approach, because, you know, things are changing constantly. And if you have that understanding from the beginning with funders, that you may revisit, you know, the approaches, the activities, whatever, it'll make it easier moving forward.
That's great, Veronica. I mean, in the activity you're on, is that first stage of adaptive management, is that going via your AOR, or is it going first with more technical folks from VHA and then to the AOR? Like, where does that adaptive management discussion first occur?
It's actually in the grant agreement. So, okay. Yeah. So yeah, I would go through it at the field level. We would discuss, but then yeah, it would go. But I mean, the understanding is there, so it wouldn't be a surprise if we do, you know, have changes.
That's great. Any others?
I just wanted to point out one thing, maybe it would be important for us, is that I have been in the management of different projects. For example, Rodwell is not with us, but we've been in a consortium program with him in South Sudan. And this project was designed to be a development project. It was an FFP project, and up to 2013, before the South Sudan civil war, the project was running well, but then immediately there was the conflict, there was massive displacement. And I recall we wrote back to FFP and requested them to adjust our program to from development to emergence to support households that had been displaced. So this happened, and I recall they advised us to also continue including a budget on of a crisis modifier within that. And another example is here in Yemen. Of course, there is no that flexibility, but we are seeing our communication with BHA going on, where we are able to move a project from a particular district to another district because of conflict. If, for example, we cannot access District A, we can move to District B. However, this change has not does not affect the activities, nor does it affect the intended outcome. So this is the slight difference between the two. And also we need to examine to what extent is the overall program design affected. If it is going to largely affect the overall goal, then I think there is more of detailed discussion that will need to go into place. But if it is simply location or changing the type of the target group, I think that is manageable. And usually the discussions can start from the field level and then sent to the grant manager, and they can listen to that.
I think that's a really good insight. Thanks, Barak. All right, so we're gonna keep moving along to Group C. So Raul, Danielle, and Veronica. I'm gonna.
So I can start, but I just wanted to know we had really bad technological issues, so we tried for 45 minutes to have a discussion, and then we input our parts. So we also broke up our answers by project startup phase, which is me, and then ongoing programming, which is Raul and Daniela. So Raul, if you don't mind going over your component, and I'll just quickly go over mine, just because we weren't able to have that discussion. So for project startup phase, we've been doing integrated community vulnerability assessments. We've had an extensive resilience pathways workshop where we brainstormed and highlighted vulnerabilities based on geographical targets. We've also been doing gender and social inclusion assessment, which touches on vulnerability components. And then during the program design, we've scoured different government statistics that guided our geographical targets and program design. And then also baseline, we're currently doing, creating the baseline tools. What we don't have, what we need is really a comprehensive COVID lens. Everyone has the tools that they're comfortable using, but there's not one person who is looking at the tools across the board to make sure we have a comprehensive approach and asking the same or relevant questions across the board. So I said it's kind of like the blind leading the blind in many ways. And then once we do have the information, as I mentioned, we have the luxury of adaptive management. So we will revisit our strategies and our approaches and modify as necessary. So I know that's very different from my colleagues, so I will let Raul talk to his component. Thank you.
Thanks. Raul?
So for us, yeah, it's true that we got a lot of challenges in communicating, and then we didn't really discuss. So we just put our point and then we shared the document. But my point was that the information that we collect is the classic information under cash and voucher assistance. So in the beginning, that information related to beneficiary vulnerability and targeting criteria. We collect information on service providers, the market, and during the implementation of the project, we monitor in order to identify the new of IDPs, and we did also sometimes need to identify new vulnerable groups. Yeah, and then the routine reports from our field progress updates. But because of this COVID outbreak, we are missing some information, especially on the adaptations and the response to the pandemic from the community itself, but also from the government and the service providers. About the adaptation response from the community, we want to know whether the solidarity mechanisms are still functioning, because Oh, sorry, I'll go beyond the hour, the time.
You're okay. You're okay.
Yeah, I'll stop here.
No, you can finish your thought there, Raul, please.
Okay. So we are interested in knowing whether this pandemic has disturbed or how disturbed the solidarity mechanism, the existing one, or if they are still working in order to be able to better tailor the assistance that we are giving to the population. We want to know also what are the plans from the government. We saw that there are some initiatives like what they call here the COVID-19 palliatives. We understand that they are planning to have a social protection register, but we are not really aware of the details, and we would really like to know all these details in order for us to see how to refer the new vulnerable groups that we cannot assist, but also in order to have a better exit strategy when our project is ending. For service providers, we want to know how they adjust to restrictions of movement of people in order to see whether they'll be able to continue providing their services. We have, during the lockdown period, we have a small disturbance where our partner vendors couldn't enough money to provide to the beneficiaries because there were some questions from the system. So we want to know better what are the plans of the service providers in order to readjust where it's possible our actions and see whether we need to have some alternatives. Yeah, so I'll stop there.
So if I hear from both of you there, maybe a critical missing piece of information, and I kind of want to vet this by the rest of the group, is just lack of knowledge of how government and civil society are themselves reacting in this event, and not really having the communication channels in place to really identify that, largely because they are also, I like Veronica's blind leading the blind example. How do the rest of you feel about that? I mean, is that an accurate statement in your context? I can get a thumbs up or a chat, a yes or a no. I mean, normally the cluster mechanism functions this way a lot of times, but I don't think the clusters are really designed to capture changes at this level right now.
I should say that there are some efforts done during through the clusters, different cluster groups here, but yeah, there are like some task force implemented, and then they give feedback sometimes, but we need to have more than that kind of information. We need more detail. We need more, I mean, a big amount of information than that we'll get from the cluster working groups, I think.
Oh, right on time. Thanks, Raul. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for the summary from all of the groups. It's helpful to frame these concepts as we head into our peer coaching. I just want to take a step back and tie this to the existing work. So if you hopefully had the opportunity to read the 2 documents we shared after the first workshop. So, sorry, for those of you that are following on Miro, we're on frame 15 now. Tips or ties to existing work and vulnerabilities, or work and initiatives, I'm sorry. So from the next steps or summary document from the expert consultation that BHA participated in, there was 6 specific next steps tied to that work. And so that's developing a list of guiding questions that can be adapted to different contexts. It's very much in the works and is somewhat being validated by our discussions over this series of application labs. Create an inventory of adaptations. I mean, you all are participating in that right now. Everything you say, we're trying to document, and we're going to write this up, you know, ask you to provide your feedback on it. And that will be one of the outputs from this. And then creating really a critical one is creating opportunities for sharing of that information. So that's also where we're at. You know, building capacity to conduct virtual high frequency data collection. I think all three groups touched on this need, maybe not necessarily for virtual, but this need to get more information and more data. What resonated with me was the civil society and government need that was highlighted in Group C there. I just encourage you all as you're working with your activities to the point it's helpful, that framework we reviewed last week in vulnerabilities to think about the varying levels of vulnerabilities and how they can occur. We encourage you to think through those frameworks in that way. And so moving on to what's next. And so this is the next frame, common challenges. When we do go into our peer coaching rooms, we're going to be asking you to kind of describe the challenge you're facing. And so based on that framework that you've all reviewed, hopefully, and that we've discussed, and based on the examples that you just shared, some of the targeting challenges we anticipate are participants in activities become more vulnerable. We know that's nothing shocking there. Households or individuals in your activity, or I'm sorry, households or activity individuals in nearby areas become more vulnerable, or participants in your activity area maybe become less vulnerable. I think that's a lens that we have to still consider and not leave off the table, is that a change in vulnerability doesn't always mean everybody is becoming more vulnerable, that some people or households or even communities can become less vulnerable as a result. We really hammered this home in Group C, I think, but understanding how civil society actors have reduced bandwidth and resources given this crisis to provide existing services, and that in the reduction in existing services creates new vulnerabilities as well. And that cuts across not just civil society, but also government and other NGOs or nonprofit organizations. So as everybody's shifting around, folks that were previously receiving critical support may no longer be receiving that support, regardless of what is going on in their communities. Tied to this frame is also some resource documents. So you're going to see the two we already shared, and then there's a new document that we hope you'll read by next week. It's really talking around changing vulnerabilities in the time of COVID-19, and it has 6 case studies embedded. If the document itself is short, it's like less than 15 pages, but if you only got 10 minutes to read it, open it, read the case studies and the key themes from each case study. They're excellent, and it's a really helpful document. We'll make sure it's emailed to you, the group, as well. So on this frame, again, this is some ways you may conceive of your targeting challenges that you'll pitch to your colleagues. We don't want you to limit yourselves just to these, but these were just to throw some spaghetti at the wall. I'm going to stop talking there, and I think it's time for us to just take a 5-minute stretch break before we jump into our peer coaching rooms. So we are going to be back in 5 minutes. I'll set the timer myself. Oh, somebody already did. Camille, thank you. And turn off your videos. If it's off, grab some coffee, walk around, stretch, and we'll see you in 5.
I think so. So let's go ahead and get started. I hope the stretching exercise helped out and everyone's full of energy again. Now, we're going to jump into the second half of this, this workshop. And so for the next many minutes, we're going to spend some time, as mentioned before, in some peer coaching groups. The main objective of this next session is for each of you to define and refine the key targeting questions that you have for your own projects. Once you are in your peer groups, you will have an individual thinking time to answer the following questions. What is or are your challenges with regard to designing or adapting your project's participant targeting? What have you already tried to do, if anything? What do you want to try? And what do you need further help with? So we're going to give everyone a few minutes to start thinking about those questions in their individual targeting questions that they want to answer. After everyone's had a chance to do this individual thinking about your own needs, each person in the peer group will have an opportunity to give and receive feedback on these questions. We will follow a peer coach with a peer coaching approach. So if one person is a client, they will share their challenges, questions, and the other folks in the group will support and give feedback. I think this all will take about 5 minutes per person. We'll have 2 or 3 minutes for answering these questions, and then 2 or 3 minutes of feedback from the rest of the group. And then once we've done this with one person, we'll move on to the next person in the group. So we're going to see if we go to, first off, does anyone have any questions on these instructions? We'll see this in frame 18, which is on the screen right now. If everyone understands, we'll move to a demo sheet just to kind of see how we're broken up here. Now, each of these groups will also have a member from the Cash Vouchers food team to kind of help facilitate if necessary. And if there are no additional questions, we'll go ahead and move right into the peer coaching breakout rooms.
But I think we might want to just show very quickly how you'll use this space. Yes?
Yes.
So in your breakouts, and maybe I can get Camille and Kim to help me out here, but we're just going to show you how you will, if you are in the board, use the space. And if you're not in the board, your facilitator will scribe for you. But Camille, let's say you're the person that's being coached. First thing you're going to do is take the sticky that says person A and write your name there, right? And we can't quite hear you, Camille. And then when you are preparing, you're going to take the top part of your column and you're going to fill in information about the challenge that you want to work on for this lab. The specific thing that you want to try to find an adaptation for in your project or activity. Camille, do you want to share what it is that you might use as a challenge?
Better now?
Yep, better.
Great. So as an example, my challenge is being able to collaborate with my very dispersed team. It's something that it has been increasingly difficult during this pandemic. So I'm going to write down that challenge here, Elisa, right? In this box.
That's correct.
So collaborating and getting things done with my dispersed team across time zones.
And maybe you'll also write, what's one thing you've tried?
We've tried a lot of Zoom, Skype for business calls.
And what's one thing you want to try?
Well, I've heard about this thing called Miro. Miro question mark? But I'm not sure. It seems very intimidating, Elisa. So we're just sticking to Skype for Business for now.
And what's something you want help with?
I really need help with figuring out how we could still meet our deadlines without having to be bombarded with all the Zoom calls.
Great. All right, and
Having
so
that here too.
fantastic. And that is how you'll present your challenge when it comes to your turn. So let's say it's now your turn. You've presented your challenge, and Kim, one of your peer coaches, she's going to ask you some questions just to understand it a little bit better. What's one question you have, Kim?
Yeah, so one question I might have is what is something that you would like to accomplish, or what's a deadline that you have in the future that you think is being difficult to achieve because of this online work and the fact that collaboration is now more difficult?
Right. Well, we have the deadline for our work plan is coming up. So
That's
there's a lot of different people plugging into that, a lot of editors and reviewers, and so that's a real challenge for us.
So Kim has now heard some further information. She's going to take 30 seconds and write some notes to get her own thoughts clear. And then when it comes time to give feedback or suggestions, Kim's going to offer some insight, and then Camille's going to take notes in the second section on what she's hearing Kim say. So Kim, what insight might you offer?
So something that I might offer is definitely getting an informal chat going, like maybe through WhatsApp, to make it easier on people who maybe you're working on through different time zones, because I know email can be really difficult to work with when people are working in different time zones. And that might make online collaboration better for you guys.
Okay.
So Camille just listens and takes notes. Maybe then Lloyd will give her some feedback. She'll take note on that one. Maybe then Louisa will give her some feedback. She'll take note on that one. And that's her turn up. And so that turn takes 10 minutes. Once that's done, we switch to the next person. Now it's Kim's turn to present her challenge. So that's the structure that you'll follow and how you'll use the space. If you can't take notes, then just ask your facilitator to take notes for you. Hopefully that was helpful. If there are any questions, please ask. Otherwise, I think Darren, you're up.
All right. Yeah, if there are any questions, otherwise we'll look at the next frame, number 20, to see how we're going to be grouped up. Go ahead and find your name there. And we're going to take the first 5 minutes to think about our individual projects and our questions. And as they showed in our demonstration, start putting the questions that we have and the points we want to think about for our projects to share out to your peers. And after we've had those few minutes to kind of put our individual thoughts down there, then we will open up the presentation and the peer discussion point.
So if you're able to write those into your groups on Miro, we want them to do that, right, Darren?
Correct. If you are, and if not, let us know and we can assist with that. Let the facilitator know, the facilitator of your group know, and we will help and put those points in.
But while they're on their own here, if you're not in the Miro board, maybe we'll put up those 4 questions again. We'll put them on the screen just now. And you can just jot those down on a piece of paper or in a Word document on your computer. So when it comes up to your turn, you just are ready with those already at hand, and then your scribe in your room will jot them down for you. I hope you enjoyed the conversations with your peers. So I'd like to take 10 or 15 minutes. How are we doing on time, folks? How much time do we have for this? I'm kind of looking at Camille, Alyssa, Louisa.
10 minutes is good.
10 minutes is good. All right. So we'd like to take about 10 minutes to kind of share back with our groups what some of these larger takeaways were. And so this is where I just encourage you to unmute yourself and just, something that you've heard that you hadn't considered, or maybe or maybe you had considered, but in a different context and how you're going to use it. Can you just unmute and share away, or chat right in the chat box is also more than welcome.
I mean, one thing I found interesting was Barack's point about his dilemma of doing a revised vulnerability criteria and just having to pitch or sell this revision to other stakeholders, internal and external. And luckily, this was a BHA funded program. So in that case, I think this Idea Lab is actually a great platform to use as kind of like an evidence that BHA is taking this very seriously. And since COVID is projected to be around, for the next 18 to 24 months. So I think that fact in itself is an important consideration to tell others as part of, trying to get their buy-in into, the vulnerability criteria, readjustments, and so on. So I think stressing those points, and I'm sure other people have the same issues because, there's a whole group talking about funding and communicating expectations with donors. So I just thought I'd mention that.
For me, I got a nice proposition from my peer on how to overcome the challenge of corruption and the risk of favoritism from community representatives who are involved in the pre-identification of beneficiaries. And the solution that was suggested seems to me both effective in resolving the problem, but also efficient in time, I think. So I was really happy to have this proposition from my peer.
Hopefully it's in detailed notes in that slide so we can all go back and learn about it.
So maybe I should go again. I think what I've learned across my team is that definitely there are different challenges in different programs. But again, some of these challenges tend to appear to be similar. What I am liking about the whole thing is to have a forum of practitioners like this. When you feel you have a challenge and then you are sharing with your peer and they tell you, no, we've been through this challenge, or we are familiar with this kind of a challenge. So then at that moment you feel that you have somebody you can turn to. So I think this particular forum on this lab is going to really be a forum that will help us. And I know that after this forum, definitely we'll have contacts of one another, and we can always reach out to one another for the peer support. So this exercise has been very valuable to show that there is the opportunity to still learn from others. And our challenges are not just unique to us, but there could be people out there who have gone through similar challenges, or even they have solutions to those challenges. Thanks.
Can I go?
Please.
What I learned from our peer coach is there is always a solution for something. It's innovative solutions are there. We learned in our group that there is voice ID to verify participants in CARE Somalia, which I didn't know. I'm working for CARE, but I don't have that information. So teams, when we are sharing information like this, it will encourage us to look at also out of the box. How can we do things differently, like the innovative idea of CARE Somalia. So as my colleague Barak said, it's good to discuss with with the people who are working at grassroots level, like the practitioners we are doing now. You will get more information and more experiences.
Any others? No, I'd like to echo like what Abi was saying. I was in his room, and one of the key challenges I think faced by everybody working in humanitarian work is coordination of beneficiary and target and vulnerability lists across practitioners, and just how hard that coordination is to keep lists up to date. And so forums like this, where we have better relationships across our organizations, is one way to do it, but it continues to always be a challenge, and one that is at times appears insurmountable to overcome, but one step at a time.
All right, so I'm going to jump in to quickly talk about homework. If everyone moves to the next frame, there we are. So now is the opportunity where we're going to start looking at our questions and our challenges and start pulling in the experiences of the people that we work with on a daily basis. We're going to ask you to look at the two options, A and B here, and then we're going to ask you to undertake one of those options. Option A is hold a conversation with internal activity team members to discuss what participant targeting adaptations have occurred or may be required over the course of the activity. Or option B, hold one or two key informant interview with project partners regarding activities participant targeting adaptations. So we'll ask you to take your name, the sticky note with your name, and put it on one of those options. A quick question for everyone. Does anyone have any questions about what those options mean? Okay. Now, I do have that other option there, and that is if you are working in tandem with someone else from this cohort. So if you together want to conduct one or two or maybe three key informant interviews, that's acceptable as well. So go ahead and put your names by whichever option you would like. And we have established already as well some templates that we can use for doing this homework. If you were to look at, after you put your name down, we'll show where you can find these templates.
You can also use the chat box if you're not inside Miro. And I can move your name for you.
Darren, I can't see the screen. I guess my Wi-Fi is too slow right now, so it's black. Can you just quickly repeat the two?
Sure, yeah.
The two categories.
So, option A is host planning conversation with internal activity team. So your team that you're working with in your organization. On what adaptation will be important for the project and how and when in the project cycle the adaptation could be introduced. option B is conduct key informant interviews with project partners to inform proposed adaptations and to further refine adaptation based on partner feedback and consultation.
Can you put me down for option A?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Now, because I'm working with Abe and Fasil in the same project, is it possible that we can hold this conversation internally?
Darren, did you catch that?
I did. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm saying that
For
myself,
me, I think also,
Fasil, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Raul. Go ahead.
yeah, so I think for me, I'll go into option A as well.
Okay.
Okay. Darren, I was saying that myself, Fasil, and Abe, we are working on the same project, so we could hold this conversation together. I think it would be fine.
Okay. That makes sense.
Thank you.
All right. So we do have the option to, we have an opportunity to download the templates that we can use for these options. There's instructions on that next panel. Are you able to see where it is that you can download these options?
And we'll also, I think it's fair for us to email them as well, Darren.
I think that's a good idea.
So Darren, or Lloyd, can you just say what they will be bringing back to the next session?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it, Darren. Or I mean, I worked on the template. I'm happy to do this. So really in the next, we just want you to have this conversation. In there is a couple resources if you're relatively new to qualitative key informant interviews or focus groups. Use or not use at will. We have some prompting questions in there for you to summarize your conversation with. And we'd just like you to share this document, this Word document back with us. And again, this is about looking if you've done this already or moving forward, if you're in the midst of doing it, or looking forward if you need to do it. But these are the conversations we're looking for you to have with either your colleagues in an activity or other stakeholders external to your activity. And we do have example questions to guide you through this conversation in that document as well.
Okay. Any final questions from anyone about expectations or what's next? Okay. So we will send out an email with these templates just so you have it. As always, if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to send us a note and we'll respond to the best of our abilities. Otherwise, we've gone a little bit over time, so I appreciate all the conversation that we've had. I think that we've had some great discussions, and I think this has been super helpful. I think we can go ahead and close for today. Feel free, as Elisa just mentioned there, feel free to fill out the rapid evaluation. It's helpful to us as we're building this for the next time. And again, our next workshop in person will be 2 weeks from today.
And thanks from all of us on our side for your participation. I hope you all have a great few weeks.